1, 2, 3.
While our weekly shows are edited to time for broadcast on public TV and community radio, we offer to our members and podcast subscribers the full uncut conversation. The following is from our episode with Akinsanya Kambon, an artist, former Marine, Black Panther, and art professor. In this deep conversation, Kambon brings histories of colonization and liberation to life. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters.
When Akinsanya Kambon's art show opened in Los Angeles in 2025, that city was emerging from some of the worst wildfires in its history. Residents had just experienced the deadly destruction of fire. Kambon's exhibition showcased something different, the transformative power of flames and smoke when cooked into extraordinary ceramics. Kambon, born in Sacramento in 1946, is a former Marine, Black Panther, and art professor. In 2023, at the age of 77, he won the prestigious Mohn Award, the top prize given by the Hammer Museum for his participation in their biennial show Made in L.A. After that, a selection of Kambon's works were presented in a solo show in Beverly Hills at the celebrated Marc Selwyn Gallery. This May, I had a chance to visit them there, where I learned that his technique is a version of Japanese reiku, which causes smoke to interact with glaze in unpredictable ways. The results, in this case, are intricate, surprising storytelling pieces that focus on suppressed histories of rebellion, vengeance, and rescue. Survival is a constant topic, and it's the standout theme of Kambon's life, too. He suffered polio as a child and turned to drawing to escape bullying and abuse. He served in Vietnam and became a lieutenant for culture for the Black Panther Party. In 1970, he was arrested in connection with the high-profile case of the Oak Park Four and spent a year incarcerated, accused of a capital crime, before being found not guilty at trial and released. He went on to earn a master's degree from Cal State Fresno and taught art for almost 30 years at Cal State Long Beach, as well as in a free youth art program he ran in his neighborhood. His one-man show will open at the New York Sculpture Center in May 2026. I visited Kambon in his studio in Long Beach earlier this year in a warehouse space with his dogs and kilns out back. The place was overflowing and alive with his work. Here's a clip from the documentary produced by the Hammer Museum on Kambon's life, Akinsanya Kambon, The Hero Avenges.
Some things I think men are just not supposed to understand. I think we just have to go with the flow. I've got so many of these things here. I mean, there's thousands of them. And each one of them has a different spiritual force. And as long as I'm doing that work, I don't worry about anything happening to me. I look at meditating and prayer as the same thing. The only thing is that when I meditate and pray, I don't ask God for anything. I thank Him for everything He's already done. I thank the ancestor spirits for everything they've done, because they've kept me alive and doing this work all these years, and I'm still doing it. And there's nothing, what else can they give me? I got life, man. And that's a blessing enough.
Akinsanya Kambon, what an incredible pleasure to be here with you. Thank you so very, very much.
It's my pleasure.
I am meeting you in your extraordinary studio and workspace. We're going to take a look around at the work, but I need to talk to you first.
Okay.
We are in very stressful times. A lot of people are super stressed, and they're afraid. There's a lot of fear out there.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to you as a survivor to talk about surviving and stories of survival, because it seems to me you have both survived more things than the average person, and you also are now making work about what it takes to survive and resist. So if you could just start by giving us your name and how you'd like to be described. How would you describe yourself?
My name is Akinsanya Kambon, which is a Yoruba name. Akinsanya is. Kambon is West African, and it means of the people. So anybody who has that name among the revolutionary segment of our society, if you have the name Kambon or Shakur, those were the revolutionary last names for people in the struggle. That's the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Guerrilla Family, all the movements that were underground. And these are like, right now, we look at all the people who are carrying the fight as cubs of the Panthers. And last time I talked to Chairman Fred Hampton Jr., he gave me this medallion. The Cubs are coming, the Cubs are here. And so I look at people to carry the fight, and they don't necessarily have to be biologically a Panther Cubs, but they did grow up with some of our children and grandchildren, and they are carrying the fight. And I think that we studied fascism in the Black Panther Party, and everybody was asking, what the hell is fascism? Well, fascism is the power of finance capital. It's the power of finance capital. And you have to have something to make sure that the military wing of the police department carries out your wishes and makes the people submit to what the rulers want. The rulers are the ones who own and control the means of production. They're the capitalist class. They're backed up by the police, the highway patrol, the National Guard, the Army, the Navy, and the Marines. So all of them are backing them up. And they all are against the masses of people. And fascism appears when the people move to exercise their democratic rights as a weapon against capitalism or imperialism.
What are people missing when they say of fascism or authoritarianism that it could never happen here? This is the great United States of America.
They're missing the history of this country. And I think that when you say it can never, it's always been here. Who do you think the Ku Klux Klan was? They was a fascist organization that tried to uphold the status quo. They tried to keep perpetrating slavery in this country, whereas those who owned and controlled the means of production on all the cotton fields, tobacco fields, and all that, they kept the slaves working. This is even after the Civil War. This is after Reconstruction. They're supposed to have the Emancipation Proclamation signed, but you have, what do they call it? Sharecropping. Sharecropping is no different than slavery. It's the same as slavery, except you arrest people for crimes like loitering or vagrancy. Do you have a job? No. Slavery is abolished, so my job is gone. Well, you're arrested. And for you to bail out, this guy with this plantation is going to let you bail you out. You work for him. Now you got a job. Crazy.
So how does it change our understanding of this moment to have an understanding of that history, especially as it relates to fascism?
I think when you look at the arm of the fascists, back in the day, they were called patty rollers. They were the ones who caught the slaves, the runaway slaves. And they're the same today. They slave catchers. They go to catch the bad guys, most of whom, they didn't even have police back in the 1700s. They didn't have to have no police because the only criminals were the slaves who escaped and were running. Those were the criminals. So they criminalized them. And the job of the patty rollers or the police, because they're the same damn thing, is to chase and capture runaway slaves and lock them up and force them to work to build a foundation of this nation. That's what their job was. And they evolved into what we know today as the police, the highway patrol, the National Guard. All these elements today serve one purpose. They're catching runaway slaves, trying to keep the system going.
So that goes to the question of survival. Going back in your life to the minute you were born, how many things have you survived?
I remember I had polio when I was 3. The left side of my face and my body was paralyzed. My left eye couldn't blink and did not tear. But I could exercise my arms, and I could exercise those. but I had difficulty exercising my face. And my mother used to try to get me to exercise my face, and I used to think she looked so silly trying to exercise her face to make me exercise my face. So that was that. And I was thinking that the fact that I had polio when I was 3, it left me with all these disabilities, that when I got my draft notice, when I told them that I had polio, they should have said, okay, we don't want you, reject. But they didn't do that. I told them I had polio. And they said, well, what was the problem? I said, well, my eye doesn't close, it doesn't tear, it doesn't blink, my left eye. And I have no way of closing it when I sleep. I have no way of closing it in a blast or anything like that. They said, well, if you're having a problem with your eyes, don't worry about it. We're going to put you right up front anyway. I said, oh. So I stopped complaining. I said, I know there's going to be some kind of way out of this.
So we've got polio, we've got Vietnam, but your survival story didn't stop there.
No, it didn't. I know that I survived the Boy Scouts of America. I was with Troop 407 in Sacramento, California, and we used to watch the white kids on the other side of the street getting ready to go camping. They had tents and sleeping bags and all that kind of stuff. And we'd stand across the street watching them. And we finally got the courage to go across on the white side. So we crossed the street. Where y'all going? We going camping. How come y'all get to go camping? Because we Boy Scouts. How can we be Boy Scouts? You have to talk to that man over there. His name was Jim. So went and talked to Jim, and Jim said, well, just take this paper and get your mother to sign it and bring it back. I said, okay. So we all took the papers, ran home, about 5 of us. And my mother didn't want to sign the paper. She told me no. So I begged and begged and begged, and she relented and she signed the paper. I was so happy. I ran outside and got all my friends. We started going to the Boy Scout meetings. And we didn't have the uniforms. All the other Boy Scouts had pants and thing with a little 407 patch on it.
You mean the white Scouts?
The white Boy Scouts, yeah. So I guess maybe it was an embarrassment for them to have these 5 little black Boy Scouts with only the hats and white T-shirts and Levi's. So we go to the meetings. It might have been an embarrassment for them. But then they were having a big meeting. They wanted everybody to come to this meeting. It was going to be at Jedediah Smith Elementary School's auditorium that doubled as a cafeteria. So we said, wow, it's right across the fence. We can walk right through the hole in the fence and be right there. So we're sitting there, and this place is packed with Boy Scouts from all over Sacramento. And they gave all the Boy Scouts a little cord about that long, little cord. They said, okay, everybody, we're tying these knots. So this guy was from Arkansas. He was the regional director for the Boy Scouts for the southern region. And he gets up on the stage and he has a big old rope and he shows us how to tie a certain knot. I forget all the names of them knots now because the drama that happened kind of eliminated that. But he shows us how to tie all these knots, and then he gets to this one knot. He says that every scout should know how to tie. And he says, but you got to be careful tying this knot. So he says, now everybody get your rope. And I sat back in the back with my friends, and we tying this rope, and you loop it 13 times around, 13 loops. I said, oh, and then you just slide it up and down. He showed us how to tie the hangman's noose. And I was so proud of my little hangman's noose. And I held it up like that, and he saw me in the back. And he came back there sitting with my friends. He grabbed me by my little arm. He walked me up on the stage. I thought he was going to show everybody how good I tied my knot. He got me to the edge of the stage, which is about 4 feet high. He walked to the front of the stage. He put that big-ass rope that he had around my neck, and he kicked me off the stage and held it with 2 hands. And I was choking. And I was trying to smile, but then when my breath got cut off and I couldn't breathe, I started choking. Then I remember blacking out. And I remember coming to, and being scared because there was two men fighting, real fist fight, trying to kill each other back there. Some man was rubbing my neck with his hands, and I was throwing up. And I was throwing up. And I was trying to breathe. I was trying to catch my breath. And then I finally got so scared, I ran. I jumped off the stage and took off running. They tried to catch me, man, but I was getting away. I got out the door and ran out in the field, and I laid down and cried. And that was, that just reminds me of stuff that happened. My great-grandmother, Mama Tannehill, she was from Texas. She come out from Dallas, Texas, along with the rest of the family, because she had a son. She had two sons, Frank and Jesse Tannehill. Frank Tannehill became a musician. He's a blues musician. His brother, Jesse, was lynched by the Klan. They lynched him, and the family had to get the hell out of Texas, and they moved to California. So that's what happened. And when my grandmother was walking me down the street, we had a little boxcar we lived in Del Paso Heights, and it was up on cement blocks. My mother bought it for $200 from this guy. And my great-grandmother had me by the hand, and she's walking me down the street, and a little classmate of mine, a little girl named Becky, I got a picture of her in my photographs, and she saw me, and she ran to the gate, and she waved her hand, hi, Mark, hi, Mark. She started waving at me, and I looked over at her, and I went to wave. My great-grandmother grabbed me by the ear, and she snatched my head around and twisted my ear. She said, that's fire and rope, son, that's fire and rope. And I started crying. I didn't know what that meant, because I just didn't know. But that little girl was my friend at school.
She was worried about your life.
Yeah, I know that.
People saw you waving at the white girl.
Yeah, even at that age, 4. It just made me feel bad, because that little girl, when I used to get to school in kindergarten, and they used to tease me, throw me down and put dirt in my face and call me Cyclops and all the shit that the other kids did, she would be the one putting her arm, pushing them off of me and putting her arm around me, rubbing on me and stuff like that. And I didn't know how I could not like that girl, you know. But then later I found out that Mama Tannehill's son, Jesse, was lynched by the Klan. That's why the family moved out here from Texas.
There's another time that the state tried to kill you.
That was later on. That was for murder. They said I killed a police officer. And it was devastating, because I know so much about the history of this country when it comes to the criminal justice system and how unfair it is. And I have never seen anybody black accused of that crime, murder, and acquitted. I never saw it. And I didn't plan on seeing it. My father left when I was 2 years old. I didn't see him. Just one day my dad was gone. My mother didn't know where he was. At going to Vietnam and getting out of Vietnam and being in the Panther Party and getting arrested for the murder of a police officer in Oak Park, I'm fighting for my life. My dad shows up.
You're on death row at this point?
Yes, I'm on death row at this point. It's Sacramento County Jail death row. They have a wing on the 3rd floor for everybody who's going to San Quentin's death row if they're convicted. So that's where I was. 3 West 6. That was my cell. 3 West 6. That was my cell number. And when they brought me down to see him, and he was looking at me, and he started crying. And I told him, I said, Dad, I'm cool. I got this. You know, don't, because it hurt me to see my dad cry, you know. And then the visit was over. And I thought about that. I said, damn, is there any way I can go to this man and tell him? And then when we were released, we were acquitted. First place I went was St. Louis to visit my father. St. Louis, where Quincy Troop, Oliver Jackson, All these artists and poets and poet laureates, all these people are from St. Louis. My father was living there, but I didn't know none of them at the time. I went and visited my father, and I said, Dad, I asked you why you left when I was 15, and you didn't tell me. I want to know why you didn't tell me, and if you can tell me now. He said, I didn't tell you then because I didn't think you was old enough. You was only 15. And when I met your mother, I used to gamble. I just got out of the Army. I was discharged from Fort Bill, I think it is. I don't know where that is. It's in California, I believe. But he said he used to go to these clubs, and he would gamble at night. And he had won $500 this night. And he knew that the police had a reputation in Sacramento for coming to all those black nightclubs and taking their money. Anybody who had money, they would rob them, just search them and take their money. And my dad rolled his $500 up and stuck it down in his sock, because in 1948, I guess that was a lot of money. And when they came to him and they got to patting him down, he was standing by a pool rack. And when that guy went down below his waist, he grabbed a pool stick and went upside his head and started beating him. All the police jumped on my dad. They beat him down. They broke his arm. How he got away, I don't know. But when he got away, he heard that one of the police officers had died. And so that meant he had to get the hell out of Dodge. Well, he left without telling my mother. He just left. He gave my aunt some of the money. She was supposed to give some to my mother. I don't know. But
years later, it was dangerous for him to come and visit you.
It was, if he had a warrant back in 1948, a murder warrant, I looked at him and I said, Dad, you know the statute of limitations don't run out on murder? He said, yeah, I know that. I said, well, why in the hell did you take a chance in coming to visit me? He said, son, I've been a black man a long time. That is words he used, but he said, and I have seen lynchings, castrations in Mississippi. Growing up all my life, I've seen black men lynched, castrated, burned alive. I ain't never seen nobody charged with what you charged with that come out of it unscathed. So I figured it was going to be my last chance to see you alive. So I took that chance and came to visit you.
Now, you were acquitted.
I was.
And you were released.
I was.
And you are here with us still.
I am.
And I've asked you to mention these stories just to remind people in this moment how much a person can survive, how much a person can go through and be here and be making incredible art. When did you first think of yourself as an artist going through all of this? Or did you ever have a moment?
I thought of myself as an artist even when I was a child, because art was therapy for me. When I was in kindergarten, when I would get all the teasing and the bullying on the play yard, I wouldn't want to go out to play. I'd sit at my desk and stay and draw. I'd just sit down and draw. And that's what I did. I used art as a therapy. And it was incredible, the things that you can do if you don't really have a whole lot of options. You look at the options. Well, I can go out on the yard and I get jumped on by the rest of the kids. They're going to throw me down, call me Cyclops, Popeye, all that stuff I got to go through. So I said, no, I use it to develop myself as an artist. But I used to always seem like I would always take the side of the underdog. I would always be a champion. I used to wonder, how come every time the Indians won, they called it a massacre? And when the soldiers won, it was a victory. I used to look at that painting we had in Custer's Last Stand. It was a picture of Custer fighting the Lakota Nation, and him standing up fighting them bravely and courageously as they killed him. That was a massacre. And I'm saying, why is that a massacre? Because I never could identify with the people who killed Custer. I know they had a black man that was supposed to take Custer to the Little Bighorn. His name was James Beckwourth. But don't nobody talk about him in history. He was the best guy that they had. And he led Custer around in a big circle for 4 or 5 hours, allowing the Native Americans to get ready for Custer. When they got ready, and Custer got to the little bigger, and it wasn't just women and children there like he expected. Man, they had the whole nation, Lakota Nation, came down on his butt. And they wiped him out. And he told, when he realized that Beckworth was leading him, stalling, he said, "You getting court-martialed when I get back. Now you get on back to the fort." So he sent Beckworth on back to the fort. He was going to get court-martialed. But see, Beckworth was half Native American himself, and they raised him. And he couldn't take them people to kill all the men and women and children that he grew up with.
So that's one of those stories that people haven't heard of.
That's right, and that's one that they'll never hear about.
You continued to tell stories through your art in Vietnam.
Yes, I did.
And afterwards.
Yes.
What was your role in the Black Panthers, and how did you get associated with the Black Panthers?
I heard about the Black Panthers initially when I was in Vietnam. We had these soul sessions every Wednesday. The older brothers who realized that they had drafted a lot of Marines in 1965, 66, and some of us were illiterate. We could not read. So they would read the Stars and Stripes to us and try to let us know what was going on with the war and what's going on back in the States. And so that's where I start understanding the importance of knowing how to read is, because I knew I couldn't. And if I had had to join the Marine Corps, I would have never gotten in because I couldn't read. I don't think polio made a damn difference. They didn't care about that. But the fact that you have to pass the test to get in, but when you drafted, they really don't care. They just need bodies. So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I had an interest in the Black Panther Party. I was curious. I know they had a funeral for Bobby Hutton, and I know that happened when I was in Camp Pendleton. And Marlon Brando was at the funeral. And I was like, damn. So I was really interested now, because I kind of like Marlon Brando a little bit. And we learned, and I checked him out, and I knew a guy that was in the Panther Party, and he was always trying to get me to come to one of their meetings, and I'd always say, I ain't got time, I got to do this, got to do that. But he was going with my cousin, and I was living in her garage. And I come home, if I saw his red Mustang out front, I wouldn't come home. I'd wait till I didn't see the car out there. Then I'd come. One morning I got up in the garage and I come in the kitchen, and there he is in the kitchen. I said, hey man, I got some tickets for you to come to this function we having. I said, no, I don't want to. I don't think so. He said, no, here's 2 tickets. Bring a girl. I said, he said, no, come on. You don't worry about the paying. Don't worry about it. Just make sure you come. I said, yeah, okay. So they were really trying to recruit me. And I know why, because I did a drawing for the group called Association for Black Unity, ABU. I did this drawing of a Panther, a Muslim, a NAACP person, a Urban League person, all shaking hands together, all the different organizations. And they liked it. So they were trying to recruit me into the Black Panther Party.
And they were successful.
Yeah, they were. And the reason they were I wasn't thinking, I was emotional. They had this thing, and I'm sitting there at this club, and I got my girlfriend with me. And she was a girl that I figured if anything happened, she can handle herself, and she can get on her own, handle it. So I said, okay, cool. So then it was over, and all the people were leaving. And about 50 police lined up outside the club on Stockton Boulevard. And they started calling all the Panthers up on stage who had just joined the Panther Party. They call one guy, he gets up and everybody stands up, give him a standing ovation. They call another guy, he gets up there and lines up. They all lined up. And then they called my name. And I looked around, I said, what the hell's going on? And everybody pushing me up out of my chair, clapping. I said, damn, so they pushed me up on the stage with the rest of them. So I'm standing up there with these Panthers, right? And I'm looking around wondering, what the hell am I doing up here? Then they said, all Panthers outside. All Panthers outside. The pigs are vamping. So we run outside. I run out there, and I'm standing up here with all these brothers. It's about 30 of us on one side of the street. And we all standing up there, parade dress with our arms across our chests. And we got about 50 police across the street. And the people leaving the club start throwing bottles at the police, beer bottles and stuff. And the police started charging them like they were getting ready to charge. And I'm standing here, and all of a sudden, the guy in front says, Panthers, on guard. And all the Panthers, went into a karate stance. And the police who were charging across the street, they put on brakes, and they start slipping and falling in the street because they'd never seen nothing like that. I hadn't either. I said, damn, who in the hell are these people? So I started doing more research now. They backed him up back across the street. They started talking to him. He started talking to the captain of the police, and they were negotiating whatever. I don't know what it was, but they were trying to stop the people from throwing bottles at the police. So then we all got in the cars, and we caravanned out to Del Paso Heights. And we broke up, and I'm trying to find out what the hell do these Panthers have. I found out they had one pistol, a .38 with 2 bullets. Another guy had a rifle with, I think, 5 .22 shells in it. And another guy had a shotgun. That's all the weaponry they had with 30 people.
Hi, it's Laura. Independent media is a collaborative project, and you play a critical part in it. This show is made possible by our viewers and listeners, not corporations or advertisers. So join our member supporter honor roll by going to lauraflanders.org/donate to contribute. That's lauraflanders.org/donate. And please stay kind, stay curious, and commit to supporting this no ads, no gimmicks, not all about profit show, again, or for the very first time. Thank you.
And a reminder to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you. Now back to our full Uncut conversation.
So how did your image of the Panthers change from the reality? Like, how was your impression before you found yourself a member different from what you discovered once you did join? One thing, you found out they didn't have the weaponry that
I found they didn't have the weaponry that I thought they had, and they didn't know how to use the weapons that they had. With the military experience that I had, being trained in the Marine Corps, I know how to shoot. I know what sight alignment is. I know all that. So I'm qualified to teach that.
But what else?
They had the courage. And I saw the courage that these young brothers and sisters had, and I couldn't believe it. I said, but I can't let them go out there by themselves because they're just going to get killed, which they probably would have. So I started using the stuff that I learned in Vietnam, I learned in the Marine Corps. I started teaching military drill to the Panthers. I started teaching weapon safety to the Panthers. You know, we ain't never had nobody get accidentally shot by no Panthers.
And at the end of the day, you become a lieutenant for culture.
I became the lieutenant of culture, yes. That involved working directly under Emory Douglas, who was the minister of culture. And I would turn in my drawings that I did to him, and he would publish them in the newspaper. And we got a lot of old publishing. I tried to get the original drawings back, and they said, well, they were in a barn in somebody's garage, and it caught on fire, and all of them burned up.
Well, some things survive.
Well,
the coloring book.
The coloring book did survive, yeah.
Talk about that.
And the coloring book, it was a project that I actually did on my own, and I took it to Oakland and let Bobby Seale look at it. He got all excited. Oh, man, this is great. I said, but it's not finished. I said, I'm trying to finish. Oh, it's finished enough.
What was the goal of it?
The goal was to teach people our history. That's what I didn't know. That's when I learned about the history of the slave rebellions when I was in Vietnam. It made me proud because I learned that our people resisted. We didn't do like they said. We just sang and danced and ate watermelon. That's what they told us. That's what you see in all the Step and Fetch It movies and Shirley Temple. And you see all this stuff, and you realize that we rebelled. That kind of gives you a sense of pride that you didn't just accept the exploitation of your people. You fought against it. We had people that fought against it. We had people that were lynched, that were castrated, that were murdered, had all these things done to them, hung from trees from one end of the country to the other. So it made you have a sense of pride. So I felt prideful. And I felt that other young African-American men and women could look at this coloring book as a history book and just see the part where we fought against slavery. That was the main part I tried to emphasize. The Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, Toussaint Louverture, all this, and I've learned more since then. A lot of the things that happened to us in this country was a result of how we resisted. They would not allow us in the Americas to play drums. You know, you couldn't play no drums here. Only place they had is in Louisiana, Congo Square, where they played drums. And they stopped that after the 1811 slave rebellion, which my great-great-great-grandfather was beheaded in.
The German Coast Uprising.
German Coast, Louisiana, that's right. You're right. And so you start understanding all this history until I got with my father and he gave my connection with all this history. I said, well, damn, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be fighting.
So your work has particularly, I mean, you've got your pictures here, your paintings, but this focus on the ceramic work. What drew you to the ceramics? Is there something about the kiln, the fire, the smoke? Is that specific to the appeal?
I think that it's a graduation. When you start in the art world, you start out drawing. Then you start painting. Then when you get to the three-dimensional level with the sculpture, ceramic sculpture or bronze sculpture or wood carving, whatever, you're on another level. And I think that's the last stage. And I've got this to the point where the pieces that I'm doing, their intention is to be cast in bronze eventually. But that costs money. So I haven't been able to afford that. So I get pieces cast little by little. When I make a little money, I go give it to the bronze man and he casts bronze. So that's what I've been trying to do.
So it's not the smoke and the fire, something about that.
That process of raku is quite you just get caught, you get brought into that. And that's kind of what, I'm doing this raku, man, and I pull these things out of the fire. You don't know what you're going to get. You pull them out, man, and you get all these metallic lusters and coppers and silvers and golds. It's so beautiful. And that's what I'm after. And you get addicted to that. And I'd say I am addicted.
I mean, it seems metaphorical also in terms of the beauty that comes out of going through the fire.
Exactly.
But maybe I'm being too metaphorical here.
No, there's a spiritual thing connected with that fire and then the drums. And I can understand it. You will get drummers over here to sit out there with their drums and some people dancing, drumming and dancing. And the drums call the ancestor spirits into the kiln. And they go into the fire. And they get in there with the pieces. And they imbue the pieces with its ancestor spirit. And I can feel its presence. And I love it. I was out there one time and we pulled a piece out. This is when I was younger. I had 2 arms at the time. And we put it on this metal table. And we hit it with the hose. It was some shackled up men and women. They had chains around their necks. And after we hit it with the water started boiling because it was so hot. And the mouths were open. And you could hear these things start screaming like women and children, women wailing. And I didn't hear it at first. My dogs heard it. I had 2 Doberman pinschers out there. They heard it. Their ears went up, and they took off running. I said, what's wrong with them dogs? And then I heard it. And I called my friend. I said, Derek, get over here, man. Listen to this. And you could hear these women wailing. And I said, oh, my God, this thing. And I took it. I brought it down here after that happened. I set it on the table. A guy came in from Senegal. A friend of mine brought him in, and we're talking. And I told him about the piece. He said, oh, yeah. He said, that's Kumba Castile. I said, Kumba Castile? I said, what is that? He says that's the female wailing spirit of Goree Island, where they had the birthing room for the women that were pregnant. Oh my God, man. That I said, damn, I don't know where this is coming from, but it's coming from someplace. I didn't really realize where it actually came from until 1994, when I actually did go to Goree Island. Well, I went before that, but I went to Elmina Castle in Ghana. I went to Elmina and Cape Coast Castle, and me and my wife went in there. And I went down in there.
And that was where the enslaved Africans were held before they were forced onto the Middle Passage.
Exactly. And so we were on a tour. The docent had a tour group going through, and some woman asked what these two big old balls, they were huge balls about this big around, out in the courtyard, two of them. And he tried to ignore the question. So the woman was persistent, so she asked again. And he said, okay, I'm going to tell you. So he reluctantly told us. He said, a lot of times the women come in and they're beautiful. And the guy who ran the fort would want to make sex with them. And they would usually refuse. If they refused, he would chain them up by the leg to that big ball in the courtyard until they decided to come up the stairs to his bedroom. And so I was standing by this guy from France, and he thought the shit was funny. He just started laughing. And I usually carry that big old K-bar on my side. And my wife was standing next to me. She knows when I'm getting upset. I grabbed this fool by his throat, and I was trying to get my knife out. I don't know what I was going to do. But she grabbed me, and she pulled me off of him and made me go out. I was pissed. But as I walked out over these bricks, the bricks that had the floor, cover the floor, from the thousands of Africans who had walked across this, going up and down that, these bricks had been sanded by their feet, sanded round like bubbles. They weren't square anymore. And that's what I was thinking about as I walked up there and I got out in the sun, and I was so glad to come out of that dungeon. Some spiritual things happened to me in there. Then after the tour was over, the docent came over. My wife came over first. Then he came over. And he said, brother, if you and your wife want to go back in there, he said, you can. He said, I understand how you felt, you know. And I said, well, yeah, I appreciate that. So we both went back down in that dungeon. So I go in this big dungeon. They said there was over 500 Africans in there. And somebody put some candles on the altar up there. And I got on my knees and I started meditating. And I'm not even though I was an ordained minister, I am an ordained minister, I'm not that into spiritual stuff like that. Not the Bible and not the Koran, but I'm down here and I'm on my knees, and all of a sudden I hear this woman say, we've been waiting for you. And look, this scared the mess out of me. I looked up and I saw all these spirits around the room, and a woman was doing the talking. She said, we need you to teach our children who was stolen about our history, about our culture, and about our religions. And I thought about that, and I said to myself, I thought to myself, I didn't say a word. I said, but I don't know nothing about that. I thought that. And she said, don't worry. She could hear what I thought. She said, we have been guiding your hands. I said, oh my God. So I backed up. I said, okay. As long as you guide my hands, baby, I'm with you. And that's what I do.
That's what you've been doing. Now you're going to show me around and tell me some of the stories that your work is telling.
I can do that.
But I have just a couple more questions, and one is about this moment.
Okay.
What do you think are the stories that most need to be told right now?
I think that people need to make the connection of our history and what's going on today. I think people really need to make the connection that we were brought here as slaves. We were African people brought here to be slave labor to build this economy. Now, this economy is one of the strongest on earth. And I think we have a responsibility to help destroy it, especially when it oppresses other people, whoever they are. I feel like this is our fight. I feel like we're responsible for getting here, even though nobody gives us credit for it. But we did build this country.
Did you just say you're responsible for destroying it?
Yes.
So what about all the African Americans who say we just want a piece of it?
Well, I think they are sick and they need to understand what they're saying. You just want a piece of what? You want a piece of all the lynchings and all the hangings and all the burnings and all the rapes and the murders that this country has done all over the world. I think that when you don't know the truth, you can sit there and be ignorant. But if you know the truth, you have a responsibility to put an end to these atrocities.
But it's very hard to be in favor of destroying something without having a clear idea of what might take its place.
Well, I think that what takes its place is a movement that's about socialism. And in Africa, there's a strong Pan-African movement going on. It's been going on ever since I've been in my 20s, and I've been involved in it. I was involved in fighting against Angola, Mozambique, and Guinea-Bissau, fighting the Portuguese. I was involved in fighting the Rhodesian army against ZANU and ZAPU. I was involved with the PAC in South Africa. I was involved in all this stuff. I've been to the rallies. I've been to the continent. I've worked with freedom fighters. I've studied with freedom fighters. I tried to go to Guinea-Bissau and got captured over there. It was crazy, but I've been involved in this.
None of them has become a socialist paradise.
No, they haven't. Because you got to understand the forces of opposition. And a lot of times the forces of opposition are stronger than us at a certain point in time in history, but we always come out victorious.
The demands of the Black Panthers at the time, the wants, and you also illustrated the 10-point plan, as I remember.
10-point platform and program.
That.
I did. I got it back there.
When you say socialism, to put some kind of picture of what that is. I mean, the wants there were listed as, I don't know, land, bread, housing,
education, justice, and peace. And as our major political objective, we want a United Nations supervised plebiscite to be held throughout the Black colony, to which only Black colonial subjects will be allowed to participate for the purpose of determining our national destiny. So we're saying let our people determine what they want as our national destiny. But when you look at all the things that we were fighting for, they were socialist programs. We had free clothing, free shoes, free health care, free breakfast program. All the different things that we were fighting for were all socialist programs. And our position was that we'll heighten the contradictions so the people can see them. Once they're able to see the contradictions and the people take over the program that we start, then they'll be able to see the contradictions and they'll understand the difference in socialism and capitalism.
So what happened?
We had a lot of infiltration. We had a lot of provocateur agents that joined the Panther Party. A lot of people claiming they were Panthers. They were working for the police. You've seen some of them. And you get infiltrated to the point where you don't know who to trust. And you have divisions and you have splits. And that's what started happening in the Panther Party. That's not only the Panther Party, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, all these organizations, you try to figure out who in the hell is real and who is not. And if you see some of the shit I've seen in this, you be really reluctant whenever you see somebody that says, oh, I was a Panther back. Well, why weren't you ever arrested?
So to come back to this moment, I mean, I remember after the financial crash of 2008, after that, there were a lot of people saying, we don't want to recover capitalism. We don't want to recover the system that just broke all over us. Let's make another one. And we did a lot of reporting on co-ops and land trusts and all sorts of alternatives that have a really hard time getting traction, whether it's the media or the economy. It's hard to get traction. You made the point just a minute ago that the state come down hardest when there is resistance.
Exactly.
When there is, for lack of a better word, progress happening.
Right.
How do you understand this moment? Just a few years ago, we had the largest uprisings we've ever seen in this country around police killings of Black people.
Yeah.
And yet here we are now with people, many of them deathly afraid of the state and its ability to crack down, especially under Trump.
They should be. The state is armed and dangerous. But that's not going to stop young people from fighting. It's not. If you'll notice, back in the 60s, I was young. Back in the 50s, Mandela was young. I mean, you look and you see all these freedom fighters, they were young when they fought. And I think that you should only be allowed to be a freedom fighter for a certain length of time. When you get old, pass the torch and let the young people run with it. And I love young folks, and I'm not afraid of them running with it. I'm not afraid of getting behind them and supporting them. Because just like we were young and we fought, they got to fight.
They may be outside fighting right now.
They
That's
might
maybe
be.
who we're hearing on them.
I think that one thing, if you study societies, in any society, the youth are always willing to fight for justice at the drop of a hat. If they think it's a just cause, the young people are going to fight it. They're going to get out there. They're going to be in the forefront of it. And I'm going to be right there behind them.
I want to come back to the socialism question one more time.
Okay.
Because where I was going with that was the list of wants in that 10-point plan are wants that people have still today.
Yeah.
And while we may mystify this language of socialism, if we're talking bread, housing, education, justice, peace, that's not such radical, scary stuff, or maybe it is.
No.
What was socialism to you at that time?
At that time, we wanted the same thing that we want now. The fight's still going on. We're going to fight from one generation to the next. That's the way it is. I got ancestors who was in the fight. The great-great-great-grandfather in the 1811 Slave Rebellion who was beheaded. I even got a piece on him back there. Him and his eldest son were beheaded. And I got to even make connection with that part of my family. I would love to. But see what their kids are doing.
It just seems to me that socialism was a word, but when you break it down to bread, housing, clothing, education, not such scary stuff.
No, it's not scary at all. But it's been vilified by this country during the Cold War. They told all these things about the Russians and the Vietnamese communists and the Chinese communists, and everybody was, ain't nobody did nothing to hurt Africa and African people, but the British, the French, the Americans, the Germans, the Portuguese. Ain't no Chinese ever colonized any place in Africa that I know of.
Well, they're working on it now.
Well, we'll see. I don't think you can expect Africans to be as stupid and as vulnerable as they were when the French and the British and stuff was exploiting everything. They're not going for it like that. And they will accept help. When you're down in a deep hole and you can't get out unless the devil throws you a rope, are you going to take that rope and climb out? You're going to climb out, and when you get out, you'll deal with the devil. You have to deal with him in a revolutionary way.
All right. Thank you. So what's the role, what's the work that art does in this context?
Art educates the masses of people, not just black, not black or white or Asian. This educates the masses of young people to our struggle, to how long this struggle and how it's connected. Because if you look at some of the work here, you can see how all this stuff is connected. You can see all of it is connected, and you will be amazed at some of the things that you see.
So my last question I ask everybody on the show is, what do you think is the story that the future will tell of this moment? Looking forward, 50 years, 100 years, what do you think the future will say about us now?
I think the future is going to say of those of us who participated in the struggle on the right side, they got nothing but good things to say about us. But those who were traitors, those who betrayed the people's struggle, they're not going to have nothing positive to say about them. Matter of fact, they might be old, in a wheelchair or whatever, and little kids are going to be throwing rocks at them. And that's what they deserve.
All right, now, because you said that, I have one follow-up question.
Okay.
Which is just to young people out there who might look at you and say, well, look at the long, long fight you had and all the aspirations you had and the people that you worked with, and you did the right thing, and we're here. And so what's the point?
Well, everybody lives and everybody dies. It's not how long he or she lives to die. It's what you do between birth and death, what you do in between. And as long as you are a freedom fighter, you fight for freedom. And that's what I'm going to do. I don't feel like I've lost anything. If I would have kept living, I was going to get 78 anyway. And I might get 79. Who knows? The way my luck's been running. I don't know, but we'll just see. Let's just hope that other people pick up the baton and want to carry the fight. Just try it like that.
And get beautiful in the fire.
Exactly. Let the fire mold you to whatever you're going to be.
Beautiful. Akinsanya, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Pleasure. Really
You're
a pleasure talking to you.
Okay.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to the full conversation with Akinsanya Kambon, an artist, former Marine, Black Panther, and art professor. These audio exclusives are made possible thanks to our member supporters. Please join our members now by making a one-time donation or make it monthly. Go to patreon.com/Laura Flanders and Friends. That's also where you'll find more information on this conversation in the episode notes. That's patreon.com/Laura Flanders and Friends. And thanks again to all our member supporters.